little bit, but you will be able to do it even on your phone or on a tablet. So we really want to encourage people to do that because it's very, very convenient. So I want to talk a little bit about who gets counted. And because this is a question we get a lot. Every person who is living in the United States on April 1st is going to be counted. And so it doesn't matter where you're from, why you're here, or if you are or not documented, or whatever your immigration status is, we want to include you. So we want numbers for temporary workers, international students, any workers, everybody we want counted. And you will see this date a lot, April 1st. And we use April 1st as what we call a reference day. It is not that that's the only day you can answer. It is that we ask people to think about, oh, who was in your house April 1st? That's it. But we want to hear from everybody, and it's not just one day. So this is something that we want to share with you, like the reasons why people should be counted. So the census, your responses allow communities and other organizations to figure out what daycare is, if you need more daycare or schools, hospitals, health clinic, and any services. And this is particularly important for Spanish-speaking communities because the census numbers will tell, like a hospital, that they need to hire a translator or more nurses that are bilingual or doctors that are multilingual. So that's really important. It also informs decisions by the government and by businesses about new investments and jobs. So, for example, a big chain store is thinking about opening a grocery store. Well, they use our data to figure out how fast the population will grow, what kind of population will be growing there, so they can stock the items that they think that population will be using. And it's also about helping communities plan for the future. And so if in a community you're expected to have lots of elderly people, the planning will be different than if you're expecting to have a bunch of kids between 5 and 15, because the needs are quite different. And one of the other really important things is that the data helps determine the number of congressional representatives from each state. And so those are some of the things that for us are really important. And and we can talk more about any of them if you want to. So we talked a little bit about this. Everybody who lives in the U.S., in D.C., which is where I live, and any of the 5 U.S. territories, we're all required to respond. So one of the questions when we first had a conversation was, where are people supposed to be counted? So we count people in what we call usual residence. This is the place where the person lives and sleeps most of the time. And I'll go into the details, especially with kids. It can get a little complicated, but we'll get to that. So we want to count everybody that's living or staying at an address, not just the person or the family that rents the property. So for example, if you live in a 3-bedroom apartment and each room is a different family, you want to count everybody, not just the person that receives or picks up the form. We want everybody in there, and relatives, non-relatives, foster kids, kids that you take in, and even if they're just going to be there for a while, we want them to be counted. There are certain group facilities and people who are staying in a group facility, like a nursing home. Those people will also be counted on Census Day, and we have a different way of counting them, but we will count them. Now, of course, there's the people that don't have a usual residence, or we cannot determine where they really live. Those people will be counted where they are on Census Day, which is April 1st. So this is, let me talk a little bit about kids. So any kid under your custody who's staying in your home, and that includes any foster kid, any grandkid, any niece and nephew that you take care of. The kids are friends. Any child from birth, so even if they're born April 1st, you need to count that baby. It needs to be included in your form. Now, of course, we have all of these kids who split their time. You know, like the 50, some people have 50-50 custody, 80-20, whatever it is. And so what we want to do with those kids is we want to count them in the place they're living on April 1st. So, for example, if I have a child and the child spends every other weekend with their other parent, that child will be counted wherever he or she is sleeping on April 1st. And that's a nice thing to, nice rule to think about. I already talked about babies. And so if your baby was born April 1st, that baby may still be at the hospital, but you still want to include them on your form. So we have this list of special living situations where we have come up with plans on how to count those individuals. So students, and here we talk about college students or kids that are living in some sort of residential place, people in the military, people that are in jail or are incarcerated, people who move April 1st, and then people who do not have a fixed address. So anybody who's a citizen of a foreign country who is living in the U.S., including anybody that's a diplomat, should be counted as their U.S. resident. Without, we're not going to ask about citizenship. We just want to know who is living where. And let's say you have someone visiting for a month and they're clearly here on vacation. We do not want to count those individuals because they have a usual place of residence in another country. We get asked two questions very often. So there's the people that are living in a shelter or any other kind of sleeping facility. And then people who are staying in like what we call group quarter, which is a place where people live and several people live in one particular location. And we have come up with a plan on how to count all those people. So group quarters, for example, are nursing homes or college dormitories. So these, when we're talking about group quarters, generally the way it's done is someone will go to the administrator of that location. So if it's a college dorm, we'll go to their school, and we will ask them to provide us with the information of everyone that lives in that dorm. And that's how we will count them. Same thing with a nursing home. And then we have all of this other, in some situations, because we do not know, like people, particularly those that are experiencing homelessness, they don't have a fixed address often. So in some situations, we need to count people where they are receiving services because that's a place that we know they will be at for a particular time, or we know they're staying there for a little bit. So what we do is we send out census takers or enumerators, and they go out to the places where individuals like these receive services. For example, soup kitchens. That's a really good place where we go. Emergency shelters. We go and find out who's living there, and so that we can count them. And now we also have people who are highly mobile. So they really, they're very hard to find. People that are living in campgrounds or in RV, in a hotel, on a boat. Those individuals we have also processed in the ways that we will count them. But generally what happens is there's a day or dates that are picked, and enumerators go out around the country to those locations, and that's where we'll count them. And we have a way of counting the military. There's, everybody that lives in a barrack in the military, we'll go ahead, and the military will provide us some of that information. So do not panic if you have a family member in the military and suddenly they tell you they've never received a form, it may be because they were counted through our military operation and not through, like, if they live on base, and not the way that you may be counted. So I'm going to skip count. Well, I'm not going to skip count. So in Puerto Rico, it's been part of the count since 1910. And Puerto Rico works a little bit different than the rest of the United States. In March, which is next month, census takers deliver an invitation to participate. And then if individuals have not responded, then a census taker comes back and gets their information. So one of the areas that we have worked very hard at is trying to make sure that we count everyone, and that includes those people that are considered to be hard to count. And some of it is, you know, there's a barrier that is preventing them from being able to be counted, or we have a hard time locating them, or we may have a hard time convincing them, or we may have a hard time getting information from them because we have a barrier such as a language or low literacy, or people may have a form of a disability. And so we think about all of those pieces when we're doing this work. And so these are some of the groups that are considered hard to count. And so we put a lot of energy and effort into trying to count this community. So what are you going to be asked? You will be asked the number of people that live in your address, any additional people that may be living or staying with you. And you'll be asked about if you're an owner or a renter. We'll ask you for your phone number. And I want to be clear that the phone number is asked just in case there is a situation in which we find an error in the way that the census taker came and collected the information. There's a follow-up question, but that is the only reason why we use your phone number. And we'll ask people's names, their age, and their date of birth. And we ask both Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin and race, and whether that person lives or stays somewhere else. And we ask a question about how people are related. The question says something like, how are you related to the person that wrote this or the person that you're writing about? So that's the kind of information that we're asking. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the reasons why we ask these questions. There's a reason why we ask all of these questions. And I'm sorry, I'm going to get a cough drop because I don't have my apologies. So are there any questions about why we ask any of these questions? I'm happy to answer that now, or we can do it later.
We don't have any questions yet, so we can leave them towards the end. I think there may be an issue with Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish. That is an option, and then others can mark none of the above, or how does that work specifically with that one?
As someone who is faced with this question regularly on forms, it is divided into two. First, you will be asked, are you Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? And I personally mark yes. And in the race, you are provided the option to pick one of the races that is listed, or mark other and do a write-in. So that's one of the things that you can do. And yeah. But every time I see that question, you know, I have to take a moment to pause.
Okay. There's another one which I think is very interesting. How do persons who are of who are members of an indigenous group, but not from the US, say an indigenous person from Mexico, what should they mark in terms of race?
Okay, so the way we like to think about this is you mark whatever you want to do because it's a self-identifying. For people who are of indigenous, let's say that I'm from Guatemala, Cachiquel is a very large indigenous group. Let's say that you are an indigenous person that is Cachiquel. In that case, we cannot tell people what to mark, but they would, if they do not identify as Hispanic, they shouldn't mark that because that's not who they are. They should mark indigenous, and the name is American Indian or Indigenous American. So it is, and if they wish, they can add the name of their indigenous group.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let me say a bit about what we will not be asking you. We will not asking you your social security number. We will never ask you for money or any kind of donation. We're not going to ask you anything on behalf of a political party. We're not going to ask you about your bank account, credit card numbers, or any other financial information. We will not be asking about your citizenship or immigration status. If you see, if someone comes to your door, they tell you they're from the census and they tell you that you must provide any of this information, this is likely a scam, because we are never going to ask you any of these things. Okay, let me see. So we get a lot of questions about citizenship, so I just want to go through 3 of the most common ones. So again, the 2020 census is not asking about citizenship status. And non-citizens should be counted in the census. Everyone living in this country, regardless of their immigration status, should be counted. The other question we get a lot is, is my data safe? Why are you going to share this with law enforcement? There is a law that prevents Census Bureau staff or anybody from here from sharing information with law enforcement. So your answers cannot be used to impact your eligibility or things like government benefits, like you're getting food stamps. We are not going to share that information. And the only thing we use your data for is to get a statistical picture of the country. And there's a law called Title 13 that makes it that your personal information is always kept confidential. And census staff, even if we leave census, we are bound for life from sharing any information we have about respondents. So once you work here, you can never share personally identifiable information with anyone. So how do you answer? How do you respond? As we were saying, like, we have 3 options. And there is an internet, there's a paper way, and there's a telephone way. So the way that we're doing it's a little bit different than it was in 2010. If any of you were remember 2010, that was a long time ago. So every address in the United States, about 95% of them, is going to get a letter. And the letter is going to say, we invite you to participate, and you can answer online, and it will have a website in there, and it will also have a little code, and that's what you use to go online. You can answer by mail also. Wait for a census form to get to your home, and you can do that. And this time around, we actually have a telephone number that you can call, and you can provide your answers over the phone. That service is available in Spanish. And so these are all different ways that people can respond. you will be getting the first invitation. It will be a nice little mailer between March 12th and March 20th. So everybody will be getting that invitation. If you don't respond, we will send you reminders. We'll send you several reminders, hoping that you respond, because if you're like me, you pick up your mail and don't look at it until the weekend or forget to check your mailbox. So we'll send you several reminders, hoping that you do it this week. This is super convenient. You can do it when you're like here at Ride Metro. You can do it while you're on Metro. You can do it, while you're watching your kids play soccer. It really allows you to do it. And it's after, let's see. It's after, let me give you the date. If it by May of this year, we have not heard back from you, that is when we start this process of non-response follow-up. So this is when the person will come to your door. If you want to avoid someone at your door, you can do it over email, you can do it on the phone, you send back the form. So the non-response will be done out in communities, and you will be seeing people. And we will be using, they will be using handheld devices. I've seen them, and they're like a little bit bigger than a big phone, they look like a tiny tablet. And so they'll be clearly identified. Let me see if we have this. Here we go. And so they'll start in April to do quality checks, but you will be able to easily identify them. They have a badge. The badge has a clear photograph of them. The badges for the census have an expiration date. So that's another way for you to identify those people. And also, all census workers are issued a badge that has a very big logo, like the one you see on your screen at the bottom. And all of our equipment has the census logo. If you have questions, or you're concerned, or the person looks sketchy, because once in a while, like people, you don't trust it, feel free to give a call. I will show you how to get information for your communities and organizations so that you can get that information. You can ask the census taker to give you the number for the field office. And you can call and ask, and they should be able to tell you, oh, we have people scheduled to be out there this week. So that's some of the ways that you can identify people. Also, if you already sent it to us, you should not be getting someone at your door. So we have a number of languages that we are providing support in, and this is the list. English and Spanish, of course, are here at the top, but there's others that you can see here. I wanted to say a couple things about the language stuff. And all of our materials, including things online, are in Spanish. So all the materials that you see on the 2020 census.gov website have been translated. I know because I checked the translation. So you should be able to have that. So questionnaires, so that the actual form is available in English and in Spanish. Phone support is available in these 12 languages. And in addition to that, we're providing materials on how to fill the census and instructions in 59 other languages. So with that, we cover over 80% of language used in the U.S. So look at the language work we do. But I would say the great majority of our materials are translated into Spanish at this point. Sorry, I have a lot of paper going on here. Sorry.
Can I interrupt you with a question about the languages? Can you
Sure.
get the questionnaire in the 50-something languages or only in the ones we're showing right now on the screen?
The questionnaires are only available in English and Spanish. Phone help is available in all of these languages here. So let's say that someone who speaks Polish wants to respond in Polish, they can call the number, or it's not called customer care, but there is a number. They can call the number and someone will ask them the question over the phone and they'll be able to respond in that way. The other languages, we don't have live agents to help them, but we have a bunch of resources that explain what each one of the questions are on their form, and they can to help them fill it out.
Thank you.
So one of the new pieces of the 2020 census is what we're calling the mobile questionnaire assistance. So the idea here is that we're trying to incorporate all the technology to help people respond to census. So what we're going to do is we're working with partners to identify locations that we know have low self-response rates. So areas where we know there's a lot of young people, or there are a lot of complex households. Those are some of the things that may create a low self-response rate. So with the help of partners, we will be able to, they'll suggest to us possible locations. And this can be from anything. Things like grocery stores, festivals, churches, and in areas where we have good public transportation, like public transit location, libraries, a community center, anything where we know people will come. And we will have staff, census staff, we're going to be clearly identifiable because they'll have a t-shirt, a census t-shirt, and they'll have a mobile device. Individuals who have not responded will be able to respond on the spot. So what we're hoping to do is go to places where we generally know and people, people tend not to self-respond, and give them a tool for them to self-respond. And we can only do that with the help and support of our community partners, because you are the ones that know where things are. You are the ones that know a grocery store or where there's like a community festival or something is happening, and those are great places for this to happen. So that's one thing. I'm very excited about that. So the other piece of this is that we have developed a whole set of materials in Spanish, and we have some advertising. And so I want to show you a few of those, and then I want to show you how to get to them so that you can share them with your organization. We also have a bunch of handouts that you can use and share. You just need to download, print, post them on your social media, or do as you think is best. So this is the first one that came out, and I hope it works. My connection's being weird.
It's coming up. Give it a couple of minutes. It's like a video, correct? Yeah, there it is.
Yes. So this is one of the first ads that we have, and some of you may have already seen it. Can you hear it?
No, we can view it, but we don't have audio for it.
Let me check my audio. Oh, because I have my audio off. Okay, there we go. It should work now. My apologies for that. And I'm sorry, my connection just sort of died, but that's okay. You got to see a sense of, this is one of the first ones we published. It's also available in Spanish. In addition to that, I pulled up. This is one of the other ones that we have available. It's all on our YouTube channel. And this is my favorite one. Mariana is like nodding too. So this is a crowd favorite here. So I'm going to play it for you. It's only 30 seconds. And this is just another example. So we have several of these advertisings that, here's the other one. Oops, these are going to keep playing. So these are just a couple of examples of the materials that were developed specifically for the Hispanic and Spanish-speaking audience. And if you go to our website, and I'm going to show you in a second how to do that, you will be able to see all of them. There are many, many, and all of the materials. So let me get to it. Let's go back to my PowerPoint. No. My apologies, just decided to do something. Okay, here we go. So we have promotional and outreach materials that are available for all of you to download, print, and distribute. And these are just 3 examples. And again, all of these materials are both in Spanish and in English. And we have some that are about explaining why we should count everybody. Others are about confidentiality. And here we have an example of one in Spanish that just explains how we are going to invite everyone to participate. So this is all available on our website. And here's this. And, this is just a bunch of materials. And so I know you guys wanted me to show you a little bit about how to get to the website. So I'm going to click here. So this is the 2020 Census landing page in English. Now, there's tons of information, but if you would like this materials in Spanish, you see my cursor here, you go to the top right, click on English, and it will allow you to do Spanish or any of these other languages. So I'm going to click on Spanish. And this brings you to the Spanish landing place. Here, you can get answers to questions. We update, we're doing an update actually this afternoon. So, you know, I highly encourage you to come regularly, because we're updating this regularly. I would say we're going to start doing it even more often now. So this will give you lots of information. There's more advertising here that you can share. This was also a very nice ad. But for you who are partners or are working in the communities, I want to share how you can get some of these resources. If you go to the top left, it says Colaboradores, which is our partnerships. You click there, and it will give you every material in Spanish that we have available. So here on the left column, you click on Materiales de Promoción, promotional materials. And here is a very long list of materials. You can download the logos, but more interesting, I think, is, oops, I'm moving this too fast. It will tell you all the materials that we have available, handouts. Again, you can download these, distribute them, and we really encourage you to do so. This one, and it will tell you in what languages it's available. So you can see here, this one's only available in English. We have this one that explains how, the one we had before, like how is the census inviting people to participate and respond to the census. It's in English, it's in Spanish, and there's a version that's specific for Puerto Rico, because the Puerto Rico operation is a little different. So these are some of the ways that you can see, you can get materials. 2020 census, what you should know. Again, English and Spanish. These are one-pagers. They have nice graphics. So it's a very nice site that gives you all this information. So I think with that, I'd love to answer any questions that you may have, and, you know, yeah, just open up the conversation.
Okay, thank you very much. And it was very helpful and very interesting, and it definitely has sparked great questions from our audience. So I tried to group them in terms of topics. So let's start with one in which we have a few questions about, and it's what happened. You did mention that there may be one apartment in which there is a family living per room. So there are a number of questions about that. When there are multiple families living in the same home, when in theory one is renting and one is the primary owner, how should they fill that particular census form, or do they fill out two separate forms?
In that case, they should fill out one form. The reason is because they're all in the same household. Am I saying that correctly? I'm looking at Marianne, like making sure I'm saying this correctly. Especially because only one person is the renter, or like owns that lease or that apartment. But because we want to count everyone, even people who are living in makeshift apartments, like a garage or, you know, a shed in the back, we want all of those people, we want to include them in your form. Now, if you receive mail, let's say here in the East Coast, we have the triple-decker houses where you have very narrow space, but then there's four tiny apartments, one above the other. Those actually, each apartment in themselves gets mail separately. So we want those people to fill out one per unit. Does that clarify the question?
I think the question is that in many cases, it's not that clear because it's only in theory one housing unit, and they may even be expressly prohibited from subletting, but in practice, people sublet. As you mentioned, they
Oh,
may
yeah.
be families living in garages where, in theory, no one should be sleeping, but there may be persons doing so. So the question is, when they know that they are not abiding by their rental agreement,
Mhm.
they may be concerned about sharing that information.
So I want to reassure you that we do not share information with landlords, or if a landlord would request information about their properties or who's living there, we are forbidden by law from giving them that information. The only reason we ask about how many people are living there is because we want to know what resources that community needs. So for example, this may be a community that has recently received lots of people and there's not enough affordable housing. And so when there's not enough affordable housing, the only way for us to know is to see that there is lots of people living in a very small space. So that's one of the reasons why we like to get that information. We will not share it with landlords at any given time. You know, we are very aware that this is a practice, and we just want to encourage you to share with us how many people are living in the unit, and you should know that we are bound by law not to tell the landlord or anybody else.
Thank you. And I think this connects very nicely with the next question, which I think it's quite interesting. And this question is about whether the policy of sharing information has changed in the last 100 years. And Catherine specifically mentions that you can look up census information at the Census Bureau and actually read written from 1900. So she's wondering
Mhm.
whether she says she knows that the DEC office no longer carries that information, but she's wondering whether that information is available through states or elsewhere.
That's actually a really good question. We're gonna get the very, very nitty-gritty details. It is my understanding that census data becomes available after about 70 years. So that means that this is how you get all of this, like, services that are able to help you track down your family ancestry, because there is a way to get that information, but it is literally one life cycle. Afterwards, we're going to get you, I do not want to provide wrong information, so Marianne and I are going to do some investigation on the actual policy sharing of data, public sharing of data historically, and then we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. I think it's a great question as well.
Yes, it is. Now I'm wondering too, so we'll find out.
Okay, there is also another interesting question regarding hard to count population. And I think that I told you about this concern because we've had this question over and over again. So if an organization that's working with refugees and immigrants, who is a hard count population, as you mentioned, wants to make available, for instance, a computer in their office, specially designed for people to come in and answer and respond the census questionnaire, are they able to do that or not?
So Marianne knows much more about this stuff than I do, that particular area, but in general, yes. And because that is not being sponsored by census, an organization is helping a community, successfully complete the form. In addition, I would really encourage groups to, if they would like to have someone from census to do their mobile questionnaire assistance, they really, really should contact their regional office so that those events we can start putting them on the calendar, and we can send someone out to get it, to do it. As long as this is self-response, as long as the person is going to respond themselves, we're happy to have the collaboration.
Okay, so to stress out, this is possible if you just facilitate the device, but you must
Exactly.
refrain from helping answer the question, type them into the form or anything of that sort, correct?
Correct. So, for instance, we want to avoid that. Like, I'm going to give you an example of my dad. And someone was helping him fill out a form in Miami. And he was like, yeah, I'm Hispanic Latino. And then the woman, and then he's like, well, I don't want a race. And she said to him, well, you have to pick a race. I'm going to put that you're Black because my dad is very, very dark skinned. And that is not allowed. No. And we want to allow people to self-identify, to tell us what it is. That's what we're doing. And the mobile questionnaire assistance should be able to provide some of that support. You'll get census people with the tablet directly connected to our system.
Okay. In that same regard, anyone can go to the website and start answering the questionnaire, or do they specifically need a code or number that they are going to receive through the mail to do so?
They do not need the code. What the code does is it gives us, census, if the code is an identifier to the household, the housing structure. So the code just helps us make the processing faster. If you have an invitation at home, we really want to encourage people to use the code, but let's say you lost it because, you know, things get lost in life. It's absolutely okay for you to go in, not have the code, and just, there's a way to click that says, I don't have a code, and then respond.
Okay.
And the website will be open as soon as people start getting their mailers. Yeah, you should be, the website will be live.
Okay. If an organization that is concerned about making sure that all of the members of their community are counted is interested in knowing, you know, has everyone responded, or do they need to continue doing more outreach? Is there a way that an organization can find out what is the percentage of response in a specific area of a city or a community, or is that not available?
We do have a self-response tool that we're using. I think I need to check about when it will become available publicly, but we do have a tool. You will be, so theoretically, you should be able to see a map and say, oh, this track, this census track has, you know, it's performing, or it's a little bit below where we want it. Or, my gosh, 80% of people have responded. And so that's very nice and very good. So that's another question we're going to find out. We're going to follow up and get if there's first, if it's available, and second, if it's available, how to access it and how to use it.
Okay, that's wonderful. I have another question, and it's why are you asking specifically for ownership or rental of the home?
Yeah, that's actually that's a really interesting question. When I started working here, I have the same question. So I am going to, I have it on my notes actually. That's what we not be asked. I lost a piece of paper. Give me 1 second while I find my notes. What will not be asked? What will be asked? Owner renter. Okay, so we asked about being an whether someone owns or rents to help us create statistics about home ownership and renters. Home ownership rates traditionally in the United States serve as an indicator of the economy, or like how well, or like it's a measure of how well the economy is doing or not, and it helps in administering housing programs and planning decisions.
Okay, thank you. I think that's pretty clear. Another question that I have is whether you are still hiring. Is the Census Bureau still hiring or not?
Yes, we are still hiring, and we still have, if you look at your screen, I'm going to click on Empleos, but that's also in English, jobs. And it will tell you, and there's this green button on your right, and you can click there. Actually, I'm going to switch to the English version. So here's this 2020 Census Jobs. It provides you all kinds of information about, where you already apply. Then this green button, if you click there, it will take you to the application process. So yes, we're still hiring. We will continue to hire until we're done. So yes, and especially if you have language skills, not just Spanish, but any other language skill. We have indigenous communities now, and we love to have people that speak those indigenous languages. So we really want to encourage people to apply.
Okay, thank you. I have, I think, 3 more follow-up questions. If you have any other questions, this is the time. The first one is regarding, just to clarify, the census is going to call persons, or the persons are the ones who are going to be able to call the census and ask for assistance?
The census will not call you on the phone on the very, very, very limited circumstances we call people. But if you need help, we have a number where you can call. So just, we're not calling people. If you get a phone call that says out of the blue, you need to give me your census responses, that may not be us. So you will first receive your letter, and the letter will have a phone number for help.
Okay.
And feel free to call.
If someone is concerned about not necessarily verifying that someone is working for the census, but is observing any other kind of issue that they believe may be irregular, or questions that they should not be asking, specifically what you mentioned about what cannot be asked for, like political parties, any other thing that is not in the census form, but this person is asking, is there a phone number they can report those irregularities?
I know there is ways to report. I want to give you that. That's really important information. We're going to find out. This is Marianne is writing a list of things. We also have a link on the website that has all the rumors. So let me go to there, and they can look at you can look at any misinformation that may be happening. Where am I here? No, I can't find it.
But this, we're also talking about like a specific practice, not misinformation, but they see something that they are like, this is not what I heard, this is not what I understand that should be taking place.
Yeah, we're going to find the number that people should report to, and we will share that with you, because I think that's a really important tool to have in your community.
I just think it's not public yet.
Yeah. We don't know if it's public yet, but we'll get back to you.
Okay, great. Another question in this regard, and is at the beginning of your slideshow, you mentioned that everyone is required to respond. So if it's a requirement, what are the consequences of failing to fulfill this requirement?
So you're required by law to respond to the census. It is my understanding that it is highly unlikely that you will be arrested or there will be a fine if you do not respond. That said, there are, like in the books, there are regulations that say that you need to do it, and if not, you will be fined for not doing so. But because people respond to it, it will be so expensive to figure out who these people are, and they go find them. So, what we really want to do is encourage people to do this. The reason why it's required is because it's so important for the political system. All of our representatives get reshuffled and after the census. And that's really an important way of representation. So I think my message is, yes, there are consequences for not filling it out, but the gains we get from it are so many that we just want to encourage you to do it.
Okay. Really, it's more in your advantage than anything else to fill out the questionnaire. Yeah. It's really a time effort that pays off. Finally, we have been receiving a number of questions about Puerto Rican nationals who are not in the island currently. So you mentioned there is a specific section on that, but they are asking to whether they should be responding to the questionnaire where they are temporarily living, and they are concerned of doing so because, as we are just discussing, they understand that this may impact on the resources that will be available in the island, and their expectation is to return as soon as they rebuild back to the island. What is the response to the Puerto Ricans?
So now I've heard it. I was on an event on Saturday, and this actually, someone came up to me and asked me this exact question. So we want to encourage people to respond at the place where they're living at the moment. This allows us also to calculate the impact of these long-term events, because we can see the population before an event, the population after an event. So we want to have people counted where they're staying at. Also, this groups, or this small communities that are moving from the island to the mainland, may need resources that are very specific to them in their receiving communities. If we do not know they're there, their local governments cannot provide the things they need. So yeah, I mean, I want to be counted, in California, but I also know that it is there are services that I need that are here. So I really people should be counted where they're living currently.
Okay. And specifically, just to clarify, you said everyone who is living on April 1st. And I think it's important to clarify the concept of living versus where you were actually sleeping on April 1st. So if a family is traveling, it should still be counted for purposes of the census, correct?
Yes. So let's say, and like in my case, like I'll go to my dad's house and I spend the night on April 1st. I should not be counted there, although I am at my home and where I slept. And I need to be counted in my apartment in Washington, D.C., because that's where I live about 300 nights of the year.
Okay, correct. Thank you. Thank you very much. Finally, and I think this goes back to where you are at on the census website. Can you again clarify whether it's a requirement to be a citizen to work for the census? Because we understand this is not, but we have comments in this regard. So I think it's worth taking a couple of minutes to explain this.
Yes, definitely. We're happy to. So yes, you must be a U.S. citizen to work for the census. Part of that is because there's fingerprinting and a background check, and part of that is government employees must be U.S. citizens. Now, there is an exemption that is made. So if you're not a U.S. citizen, you could still get a job if you have a skill that someone else does not have. So for instance, if it's a rare language and we need someone with that skill, then we will make an exception. But in general, the majority of positions will go to U.S. citizens.
If someone has a work authorization, they will be hired or not?
No, only people who are U.S. citizens, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you for the question, because I think it does clarify, the challenge. But think going back to the need for indigenous languages and other specificities, that this may be the niche which may be
Mhm.
suited for those non-citizens who are able to bring this expertise to the census staff, correct?
Correct. And there's in our website we have there's a small explanation of it. So I think that it's worth having a look. Condición. Okay, so here we have at the bottom of their details, we have the stuff on bilingual applicants and people who are not U.S. citizens.
Okay, so I think it's pretty clear that people who are not U.S. citizens will be considered specifically for those positions in which they value that they speak another language. But
Yep.
if they are selected for the job, they must be able to demonstrate that they have an authorization to work.
And yeah, and pass a background check.
Okay, okay. This is all very important information.
And if you guys want more information on the jobs piece, we do have people that are job specialists that can provide you, you know, a 15-minute, 20-minute, half hour, however long you want, presentation. And they should be able to answer any questions. Just because neither one of us, I mean, I'm familiar with the basics, like the stuff that people ask me, but we do have specialists. So do reach out to Marianne and let her know if you would like that, if you're interested in that, we can set that up.
Okay, Oscar, if you have that specific question, please email us at Alianza Americas, and we will be happy to establish the contact with Marianne so that you can follow up with her in that specific element. I have two more practical final questions, but I don't know whether there's anything else, Anna, that you want to add that we haven't asked that you think it's important, or anything else, or you or Marianne?
No, not at all. We have lots and lots of information, but sometimes the information, I want this to be useful to you. So please ask all the questions you need. If you forgot after this, we are available. Send us an email and we will get the information for you.
Okay, well, the two questions are, first, whether the webinar is being recorded and whether it will be shared. Yes, this webinar is live now on YouTube, and we will send to everyone who registered for the webinar the link so that you can watch again this webinar on our YouTube channel. We also have one that we convened priorly with MalDef in Spanish. So you have English and Spanish versions of this information, which will be available to all of you on our YouTube channel. The other one is, Anna, whether you would be willing to share your slideshow with the persons who registered to the webinar. So if you send it to me, we can share it with everyone who registered for the webinar.
We'll have that. We actually, right before we connected with you guys, we were talking about that. So we're having some technical difficulties. The deck is too big to transfer via email. So we're going to get that fixed so you can get it instead of having to do some complicated procedure.
Okay.
So we'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you. Anna, thank you very much. Ana Sandoval Giron, you are an expert. We really appreciate also your Latina sensibility, because that's something that our members were asking for. So we are really happy, and we appreciate very much, your participation, your preparation specifically to answer our questions. Marianne, we also want to thank you because you have been on the back. You are on
yeah. She's sitting right here next to me. Without her, this does not happen.
Exactly. So we want to thank you very much. We want to express our appreciation to the Census Bureau for being willing to partner with the community and with immigrant networks like ours who are trying, to move this forward. We understand the importance of the census, and we're really happy that we can build on this joint effort to make sure that everyone is counted. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye.